2022 is finally wrapping up. I already did the honorable mentions of 2022 video. If you guys want to check it out, go check it out. Basically, I'm talking about the albums that, while weren't the best of, I believe are worth a shout out and definitely worth a listen. But anyway, returning to this topic of the video, 2022 has been a really weird year in terms of, it's been a long year but at the same time a very short year. It's almost like watching a 1 hour film that feels like a 3 hour film. And this year for music has been overall fantastic. I think it's even better than last year. And I just love that in every year we're outdoing the previous year, and it just shows how dedicated a lot of these musicians are and a lot of these artists are. And I'm extremely happy to just see that happen overall. In this video, I will be talking about the best albums of 2022. I will do my best to make this as quick as possible because this is a pretty lengthy list and it is much lengthier than last year's list. So yeah, let's just get right into it. On to number 38, we have TM by Brockhampton. It's been a very weird year for Brockhampton, especially since they want to, I guess, close and end this whole saga they've had, which has been a very consistent journey. They came out with 2 back-to-back albums with The Family and TM. The Family I wasn't that crazy about. I think it was fine. You know, it's basically a Kevin Abstract solo album. But I said overall it's okay, but I just don't see myself returning to it as much as I wanted to. But with TM on the other hand, it is basically a Brockhampton album. Like, I think there are some strong moments in here and just some strong bops overall. It's like the last hurrah from the group. 37, we have Heroes vs. Villains by Metro Boomin. I know this is extremely recent, it just came out a few days ago, but I feel that it's adequate to be in this list because, oh my god, I haven't had so much fun listening to a trap album in a very long time. Boomin is like the GOAT when it comes to just structuring these projects, these collaboration projects. The feature list alone should be enough to gravitate you and should lure you in to listen to it. It has so many notable features like Travis Scott, Don Toliver, Future, 21 Savage, who's like in most of this album. But yeah, even Young Thug, which Metro Spider is possibly my favorite song of this project alone. Fantastic song, especially the transition between that song to the interlude was fantastic. And yeah, Heroes vs. Villains has these seamless transitions that are just perfect, amazing. And it's the sequel to Not All Heroes Wear Capes, which I think this sequel is a much stronger album overall in comparison to the previous album. Not to discredit the previous album, aside of the bops that it had, but this one feels more of an album, and it feels like I'm gonna stick around for the entire ride. 36, we have Sick by Rose Sweatshirt. Initially, when I listened to this record, I was very confused, but when I gave it more listens, it grew on me a bit more. Projects that he's had, I think this is the most polarizing one, especially with the different sounds variations he's going with. If I'm not mistaken, Alchemist fully produced this record, or co-produced this album, in which you can tell because of the seamless transitions this has with track by track, which is, I think, is a great addition to this album. But yeah, for 22 minutes, I think it's a strong project. It has a lot of highlights in here, but it did leave me wondering with what exactly he wanted to convey, because it's more the same that we get to listen to from Earl Sweatshirt, especially with his previous EP and with some rap songs. It kind of continues that I guess topic of depression and torment. This is a very odd album from Earl. I mean, he does make some odd music, but overall I think this is a good project and definitely give it a listen. 35, we have Gemini Rights, which has basically taken TikTok by storm. I feel bad for Steve Lacy, especially with what happened with Bad Habits. But overall, this record is a great project from Steve Lacy. I wasn't even that huge a fan of Steve Lacy, but the more I listened to it, it just clicked. It's like that indie, it gives you that indie pop / rock feeling that you just want to, I guess, dive into. It gives you that type of vibe, and it's so like homemade, which it makes sense because this guy makes his music in GarageBand, which I'm not even disrespecting. If he can make records this great in GarageBand, bro, he can beat my ass in FL Studio or in Logic Pro or any application. So like, props for him. That thing is a crazy statement overall. All these tracks are very bright, they're very flamboyant, they're extremely catchy. Obviously, Bad Habits being a huge standout track. Number 34, we have Eviscerated by Funeral. This is an extremely short album. It's like 19, 18, 20 minutes, something like that. Probably even less. But yeah, it's just so fun and catchy. I just don't know how to really put this into words. Just catchy, super simplistic, but at the same time just punching. It's just very punchy and just all in your face. It's basically the best elements of hyperpop put into a very short record. It's just crazy. It's very crazy because it has so many just highlights overall sprinkled here. There's these two tracks where it's part 1 and part 2, which you feel like you're still listening to the same song, but it sort of gives it this reverse feeling. I don't know if I could put it into words. Sort of like reverse, dreamy, hyperpop. So I was saying hyperpop, and just bassy. I'm gonna mess stuff up. It reminds me of the rage trend that's going on, but just implemented to hyperpop, and just has a tempo of a 200 above tempo that is just crazy. It's like heart attack type music. At number 33 we have Crash by Charli XCX, and this has been the most polarizing record from her if I'm not mistaken, because it just alienated the entire fan base. Personally, I view this album as one of the most summerish vibes I've ever had in this year alone. It just gives you a summer vibe. It gives you this vibe that you want to play it in your car, you want to play it while you're just doing chores or you're just working out. It just has this like summer pop-ish in your face type vibe that you just want to jam into. Baby, it has been stuck in my head forever. Those strings that are playing in the background, the 808s that are playing, the kicks, the drum, everything about the track overall is just phenomenal and fantastic, and it's easily one of the best disco pop tracks I have listened to in a long time. 32 we have Wasteland, and I have a very interesting relationship with this album because at first I did not see the hype. I was very hyped for this album, but I think it fell flat in a lot of ways. But I think after my second and third and fourth listen, everything just clicked. For some reason, it just really clicked. The melodies were just, the harmonies were just there. Because Brent has this amazing voice, and I think when he uses his voice as a tool and as a weapon, it just works perfectly. He just knows how to sing. Like, this guy is one of the goats of just like singing overall. Any strong highlights that convinces you to keep on listening to the album and just to stick around listening to the entire record, because they are smooth. They are sure the lyrical content can be similar to The Weeknd's in terms of toxicity, which I do think is the whole appeal to Brent Faiyaz as an artist. But aside of that little factor, I think a lot of this album is just gorgeous in terms of how it's produced, how meticulous it sounds. Sure, some songs can, I guess, run a bit generic, or I could just be okay. Overall, I think a lot of these tracks are just well performed, are really well structured, and are just catchy. The 31 we have Not Tight by Dom and JD Beck, or JD Beck. I don't know why I say JD, but yeah, JD Beck. I've been following these people. I've been following this duo for I don't know how long. I've been following this duo for quite a while, and they have been involved behind the scenes with some of my favorite records, production-wise, and they've been just fantastic overall producing the album. If I'm not mistaken, they have been behind the scenes producing the Anderson .Paak records, some Anderson .Paak songs, especially Skate, with that joint song with Bruno Mars for the Silk Sonic, which was a fantastic song overall. But yeah, I've been seeing their work, hearing their work, and I think they're signed on the Anderson .Paak label Ape Shit, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think the first time I've heard them, aside of that Anderson .Paak thing, was on a Kenny Beats stream, because Kenny Beats tend to do these streams where he's making beats and he's inviting other people, and Dom and JD Beck just pulled up, and these guys just killed it in the stream overall, and I was just very interested in what they had to put up. So I just listened to the singles, listened to their music, and overall. And as a debut record, this is very tight. I mean, they say not tight, but overall, this record is very tight. It is just meticulously crafted. The jazz passages are amazing. The switch-ups are really cool. They're sometimes simplistic, but just extremely effective. Sure, I would have liked to see a bit more diversity here and there for the remainder of this record, but they have some great features. I mean, they have Thundercat, Anderson .Paak, Busta Rhymes, and Snoop Dogg in the same track. It was kind of crazy. But yeah, aside of that, the entire record, as I said, meticulously crafted. The drum breaks are crazy. How it just varies in speed in a lot of these tracks. The switch-ups are just seamless, but effective. As I said, simplistic but effective. The chords, everything going on with this record is honestly great, and I cannot wait to see what the sequel, what the follow-up record is going to be. Number 30, we have Continuance by Currency and The Alchemist. It is so great to hear this pair together, especially after releasing Cover Coupe, which if I'm not mistaken it's been like 11 years or 10 years since that record or that mixtape came out, and it's one of my personal favorite mixtapes of all time. And just hearing them back together again, it's great to hear them back together. And they basically offer a bit more of the same, but more toned down and a bit more mellow and chill. This record overall feels more like a jazz rap type of album, and Covert Coup being more old school and being more punchier with its beats, punchier with its drums and production and its lyrical abilities and its lyrics overall. This thing feels like a long smoke session, which you're just like chilling, people just smoking, but in a jazz club scenario, if that makes sense, and just Currency spitting bars left and right, Alchemist's production, and it's really cool to hear, very nice. I love the Tonight Show. I love the bars, the creativity Currency put in there. I think his very laid-back performance, similar to Boldy James, is a great attribute to this record, especially with how, as I said, how chill and mellow overall this record is. Louis Baggage being a fantastic track, if not my favorite song of here, collaborating with Babyface Ray. It's fantastic because the guitar is playing in the background, the guitar sample, the chill, low tempo drums playing in the background. Currency, I think, was literally smoking a blunt in here. I remember I think Currency smoking a blunt during this track is honestly kind of funny, and adds more of the smoke session vibes that are going around here. The pass the blunt type sessions. Babyface Ray giving a killer performance as well. But as I said, if you want some great bars with some jazz rap instrumentals and just a laid back feeling, very chill and low key, definitely listen to Continuance. Number 29, we have Hitler Wears Hermes 10, or just 10, because, you know, the situation that's going on with Kanye. But if I'm not mistaken, this is the final entry for the Hitler Wears Hermes franchise. It's been 10 records in this franchise, which is crazy. But yeah, Westside Gunn, I think he ends the Hitler Wears Hermes series on a strong note, on a high note, I would say. It's not as great as I wanted it to be, but overall, this record is just a pretty great record overall. Entry for this, I guess, franchise. While I don't think it's as great as Hitler Wears Hermes 8, Side A, Side B, I think overall this is a very decent project. Not necessarily something out of this world. It has some notable highlights, especially Super Kick Party, which I think the instrumental by Conductor is absolutely insane. That beat was crazy, and props for Conductor. Conductor has been kicking it around with Westside Gunn and Griselda as a whole for a while. But yeah, overall this track is just fantastic. Features, it has so many notable features. I think it has like almost the entire Wu-Tang Clan on the album, or at least 2 or 3 of the members of the Wu-Tang Clan, which I thought was freaking dope, and a Busta Rhymes in the same track, which again was dope. It was really cool. I love how they executed it overall. But yeah, overall in this record, we just have bars and bars and bars and bars, cocaine bars, just like Westside Gunn, typical Westside Gunn shit, but just sprinkled with this very nice, very punchy, and very old school hip hop beats. So number 28, we have Un Verano Sin Ti. It's pretty surprising to just hear him on this list or see him on this list, especially after not so favorable reviews I get in the past, but Y'all grew on me a lot, so it probably would be my best of 2020 list, to be fair. But yeah, Un Verano Sin Ti is such a strong record. I think it's his strongest record since Por Siempre, personally speaking. But yeah, overall this album is just so colorful, it's so playful. It has so many great reggaeton tracks. Some nice pop here and there, and it's one of the most electrifying albums I've heard during the entire year. Sure, if it's very long, 100%. It's kind of bloated here and there. The first leg of this record, I'm not even kidding, is damn near flawless. There was just not one single miss on sight in the first leg. But yeah, overall this record has some great party tracks, some great party bangers. Me Porto Bonito is fantastic. Te Di Me Preguntó is another great track that I think has been played everywhere. Anybody who hasn't listened to Hot Bunny yet, which I don't know how you haven't listened to Hot Bunny, can easily come to this record with a lot of bops and a lot of bangers despite its really monstrous length. At number 27, we have I Never Liked You by Future. This is possibly his most toxic album since, like, Monster. I think it's his most toxic album since Monster. Like, honestly, I think it is. And that's a huge achievement because Monster's extremely toxic. But yeah, going back to this album, it's basically Future being himself, giving his typical toxic one-liners. iconic bars, saying some out-of-pocket stuff like that one lesbian bar in 712, which is the intro of this album. Which, bro, if the intro already has some out-of-pocket stuff, you know this record is going to be absolutely insane, which it is, and it really delivered. Puffin' on Zooties is possibly my favorite song of this record. It just gives you this at ease, seeing colors, super high type vibe that I think a lot of songs, a lot of artists can't capture as much, as well as Future can capture it. Number 26, we have Dawn FM by The Weeknd. While I do think After Hours was a much stronger project overall and conceptually, I do have to give credit to Dawn FM because it has a lot of great pop tracks, it has a lot of great dance pop tracks, it has a lot of great synth pop tracks, it has a lot of everything, I would say. Imagine like Blinding Lights, but like an entire album around Blinding Lights, but obviously more diverse and with a different narrative. But yeah, I mean, tracks like Sacrifice, Take My Breath, and a lot of these other songs that have fantastic transitions. I mean, the transition from How Do I Make You Love Me to Take My Breath should be studied in the history books. Love the new version of Take My Breath. It feels much more complete and much better structured. At number 25, we have Age, Sex, Location by Ari Lennox. I wasn't a huge fan of her performance on the Forever Story, so diving into this record I was a bit skeptical, but oh my god, I was proven wrong because every single song in here has some great production. It's very creamy, it's very sexy, it's very laid back, and it's exactly what you would want from an R&B album. This record in particular, I think it's only 12 tracks or 13 tracks long. It's just skinny, it's very clean, it's very narrow, and it's just very consistent throughout the entire record. Tracks like Hoodie or the intro track alone are just enough to make you want to keep on listening to this album. If you want some R&B to just chill, listen to, just mind your own business, close your eyes and just get sucked up into this world, 100% listen to this album. Number 24, we have Pre-Pleasure by Julia Jacqueline. Julia Jacqueline is a new face. I've never heard of her until listening to Pre-Pleasure, and my god, I want to listen to more music of her because this record is honestly great and awesome. It's very low-key, it's very laid back, and the amount of times I have listened to this record while driving is insane. It has so much replay value, especially as I said, it's very low-key, it's very chill, and it's very, I guess, just light on the ears. It's great. It's really great. The storytelling in here, the tales about pleasure, which is ironic because it's called Pre-Pleasure, and some emotional storytelling in some tracks here and there, which I thought were honestly really well handled and just groundbreaking at some points. And the more you get absorbed by the sound, you get to hear so many elements that are just really nice. The production in here is honestly very tasteful. As I said, the lyrics in here are fantastic, and there are just so many moments where I'm just stuck in awe and I'm like, this thing is honestly gorgeous to listen to. And number 23, we have Vinyl Days by Logic. Back in 2020 though, I was a huge fan of the No Pressure album, which was about to be his final album, but he lied. He did a jukes and he kept on dropping, but I'm glad he kept on dropping because Vinyl Days is a great album overall. There are a lot of solid and great tracks in here. Orville is one of my favorite songs of the year, and man, just everything on this track is just pure hip-hop excellence. I love how Logic in this album is giving space, the adequate amount of space for his features, being lengthy verses or short verses. It has an adequate amount of space, and I think he did it excellent in this record. He did it really well. My major complaint is just only the length in this album, but overall this record is great. And if you love some old school hip-hop, some bars after bars after bars, definitely give this album a listen. Number 22, we have Church by Billy Woods. It's amazing the work ethic that this guy carries. I mean, he literally dropped Aethiopes, which is going to be on this list. It's much higher on this list, spoiler alert, I guess. But yeah, I mean, shortly after dropping Aethiopes, this guy drops another album, which is just another banger project. I mean, Billy Woods has this pen and has this, I guess, philosophy that is just so, it's so great, and you just have to sit down and marvel at his wordplay and marvel at his lyrics and lyrical structure overall, because this guy is like a poet. I mean, this guy is literal poet with the bars he is dropping. He's like next to Ka in terms of lyrical consistency. Basically, he returns with a more hip-hop album because, well, Aethiopes is obviously a hip-hop album, an alternative abstract hip-hop album. This one feels, I guess, more hip-hop in terms of the hip-hop that we are accustomed to, especially the old school boom bap, punchier drums, laid back samples type of hip hop that we're accustomed to, as I said. But yeah, much like his previous record, a lot of the material is the same. A lot of the subject matter is the same. There's very emotional tracks, like all jokes aside, where he's basically narrating about the friends that he's lost along his way. Which, just read these lyrics while listening to the song, you might just break down, because that thing is just something so hard to just stomach and listen to and sit through. Aside of the occasional very emotional moments, there are some fantastic punchier bar for bar moments, just like schism or classical music, which, my god, are the switch ups crazy in this album. The transitions are crazy, because I mean the second leg becomes much better than the first leg, and it just shows how much Billy Woods is putting 100,000,000% in every single album that he drops nowadays. In number 21, we have Learn to Swim by Red Veil. I've heard some of Red Veil's stuff. I mean, I would say his feature stuff, especially in Fuck Your Expectations Part 1, and some other work as well, especially Wait, which I thought was a banger song that came out, obviously, back in 2020. But yeah, I didn't give him that much attention until now when this record came out and the amount of buzz surrounding his album, and when I listened to it, I'm glad I did, first of all. I just was blown away because the amount of creativity this guy has, and I think he's like 19, if not younger, is honestly great and fantastic. I mean, the jazz undertone this record has, the accessibility that this record has, the samples, the sample chops, the beats, the instrumentals, the bars, the aggressiveness, the flows. He has everything on this album set up and laid out for him. He has a whole blueprint established. And I think this record, as an artist, is just like Red Veil saying, look, I'm going to grow even further, and I want y'all to take me seriously. And number 20, we have Fossora by Bjork, aka the queen of art pop, basically. But she comes back extremely strong with this album, with a very conceptual, theatrical cut. There are so many moments in here where, wow, I thought we were a bit too lengthy. I thought we're like, wow, I'm like witnessing Pan's Labyrinth all over again. Fossora just has so much going on with it. How the concept of maternity, motherhood, childcare, everything going on with that topic, being a parent overall, is explored so in depth in this album. And it isn't necessarily the first time she's explored or wondered in this topic or this theme. I think it's her most developed record touching that theme. A lot of these lyrical passages are just extremely metaphorical and are just, it's a type of lyrics you just gawk at and you have to just praise a lot and appreciate how well and how perfectly structured it is. And number 19, we have Soul Separately by the GOAT himself, Freddie Gibbs. Even when he's alone without Alchemist or without Madlib trying to, I guess, help him out in the entire record, this guy still spits bars after bars after bars and is still in his comfort zone. While the first few tracks in this record were a bit janky here and there, the entire remainder of this record is just nothing but straight heat and banger after banger after banger. Tracks like Feel No Pain with Anderson .Paak and Raekwon, which are just, it's like they delivered. Raekwon delivered his verse. I was getting some nostalgic Only for Cuban Link vibes, some Wu-Tang vibes in there as well. Anderson .Paak providing the hook and the chorus segment for this album, which he does really freaking well. And I really like how they're collaborating once again, because I love Giannis by Ben and I love that track a lot. And even the tracks that, wow, you would listen to and you're like, this isn't necessarily his best stuff, they're still great songs overall, and it's like, this guy cannot miss, and he has not missed once. He has been on a winning streak for these past couple of years, and this guy just, he's incapable of missing. And number 18, we have possibly the most unexpected release ever. Quedeca with I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. This record is honestly possibly the best, I hate saying this label, YouTuber music album I've heard ever, I think. Yeah, just plain simple, I've heard ever. There's never been a YouTuber, or I guess someone who came from YouTube, who's made an album as conceptual, as cohesive, or as consistent as this album. Because man, is this album just great overall, and it's like explosive. Quedeca being a YouTuber or a rapper who you would expect, just basically being your typical generic rapper who just doesn't have as much variety prior to this record, obviously. But then 2020 shocking the world with Syphilis, I don't know how to say that name, or the record that came out that year, you know, with a bit more grandiose production going around, and just expanding even further with this new album. It's like, you gotta sit down and just think, like, is this the same dude who just who started off saying these bars or started off saying this music that we didn't like prior. Like it's like wow, it's an evolution that just has you gawking everywhere. And track by track in this album, I feel haunted. Like he says I didn't mean to haunt you, but during this entire record, I feel haunted. Very oozy, mystical, ghost type vibes I get from this record are just off the charts. I think that was the purpose of this album, if I'm not mistaken. His purpose was to, I guess, get this whole conceptual narrative of death, I would say internal death, and depression, and loneliness, anxiety, all those type of, I guess, themes colliding in this album alone. And I think it's executed really well. And what takes the cake as well, aside of the great lyrical passages in here, I think it's the production, because my God, I was scared. I was actually scared and creeped out listening to this album, because I was listening to it for the first time at nighttime with the AirPods on. My God, my mind was blown, and I just felt creeped out. I think the last time I felt creeped out of an album was possibly the Clipping album that came out 2 years ago, which was another crazy Halloween type album. But yeah, this record overall is fantastic. It is great, and man, Quedeca is now the goat of YouTube music. He is, and he's just more artistic. At number 17, we have Super Champion by Otokobe Beaver. The Japanese punk rock, I think they are punk rock group. It just blows our minds again with this new record. Iketoma Hits, or Itekoma Hits, or however you pronounce that album, was a fantastic blow mind type record. Like the last time I felt an album like that was like possibly Money Store by Death Grips. But yeah, it was explosive, it was in your face, it was just super fast paced. These short tracks just connecting each other were just seamless and just perfect. And they seem to just relive the magic once again with this new record. It's an extremely short record, I think clocking in around 28 minutes or 18 minutes. And track by track, it's just connecting to just one, I guess, long album with these screamish type vocals. He's like, just super energetic vocals, screaming their minds out, and just perfecting the art of punk rock once again. And I love that we're getting more Japanese bands and groups that are just keeping this fire alive. 16, Queen Beyonce returns with Renaissance. She does not miss, bro. She just does not miss. And this new record is just proof of like she's still kicking it. I think here are just well, and you can tell Beyonce is possibly the best one that's capable of making fantastic dancehall tracks, especially nowadays with the modern music and all. I think Beyonce has been possibly the best one who has been capable of making dancehall without seeming corny or without, I guess, trying to gentrify the genre itself. Puts a lot of attention to detail. The harmonies in here that are sprinkled throughout are fantastic. Her singing voice is great. The transitions, I think it was Cuff It, transitioning to, I don't know if it was Cozy or Cuff It, transitioning to this one song which is very like bouncy, has bouncy 808s, and then that one song transitioning to Break My Soul. It was a fantastic 3-track transition which only Beyonce can pull off, to be honest. In the Plastic Sofa, and in the Plastic Off the Sofa track, transitioning to Virgo's Groove was fantastic. I mean, there's so many tracks in here, so many moments where you're like, how did she manage to just transition to that track, from this track to that track, so effortlessly without seeming like if she was forcing something upon the listener? It just sounds fantastic. It's great. It's catchy. There's so many moments in here that are still stuck in my head. I mean, Cuff It, just a hook and melody of Cuff It is ingrained into my brain till this day. Very fun, very electrifying, and I never once said I feel like she acted like an old head. I mean, it's like perfect music for any type of generation. And the mere fact that she's still keeping up with every generation or every type of trend going on and making her own trend, creating her own wave, is fantastic even to today's standards. Number 15, we have MOTOMAMI by ROSALIA. I've never listened to a ROSALIA project before until listening to MOTOMAMI. And I gotta say, I was honestly surprised and shocked. It always struck me that ROSALIA was a bit too safe, or just didn't express herself that much. But after listening to MOTOMAMI, it's like watching an art project unfold. It's honestly crazy, especially in terms of mainstream music and mainstream reggaeton. She's pushing boundaries I don't think I've ever seen being pushed prior to, in terms of reggaeton. I'm trying to say the blend of art pop, reggaeton. I don't think she put some dancehall, if I'm mistaken. I might be tripping. Some industrial music here and there, and I guess some playero type of music. just all into one is honestly great and fantastic. It's like this myriad of ideas. So many highlights in here. I love Candy. The intro track Saoko is honestly one of the catchiest, explosive pieces of reggaeton or just pop or Spanish music in general that I've heard in a long time. And of course, how can I forget Bizcochito having the super fast-paced instrumental Rosalia just being on beat for the entire time for just the 1 minute and 50-second track. It is explosive. It's kind of hilarious at the same time, especially the cute little fast-paced vocal lines and pitched-up vocal lines that you hear here and there. It's honestly cute. It's honestly quirky. And it's very quick and catchy as hell. 14, we have God Don't Make Mistakes by Conway the Machine. Griselda keeps on kicking. I mean, bro, we already have What's That Gun in this list alone. But yeah, I mean, Conway the Machine, he comes back with a more conceptual record. And this record is even more conceptual from King to a God, and even darker than that project alone, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, God Don't Make Mistakes is a very dark project overall. It has some very dark undertones, especially narrating his near-death experiences, narrating his substance abuse issues. I mean, Stress is honestly the darkest track from Conway the Machine ever, from what I've heard personally. It's his darkest song. The lyrical passages in there are crazy. The lyrics in there are very dark, depressive, and the lines of calling for help. Does anybody care if I'm stressed? I mean, I try to die. I see my brothers die. I have suicidal thoughts, mental battles. Themes like these are like the call for help type themes that we have to be paying more attention to. I'm glad that Conway managed to overcome these battles, and this record feels more of a reflection of those battles as well. I'm just glad that he managed to get it all off his chest. And number 13, we have It's Almost Dry by Pusha T. This guy does not miss. I mean, obviously he's been an OG since the early 2000s or late 90s, especially with Clips. But man, I mean, his solo project has been nothing but great nowadays. I mean, but his solo project has been great. And It's Almost Dry. It just feels like he's an autopilot, not like in a negative way, but it's like he's an autopilot in terms of, bro, I can do this any day. I can drop 3 records of this and end up in the album of the year list 100 times if I want to. I mean, like, this guy eats beats for lunch. This guy eats beats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every freaking day. His punchlines are fantastic. Track by track, there are just nothing but bops. Hear Me Clearly was basically a freestyle in a nutshell, but a freestyle we're getting, you know, an overwhelming amount of bars, fantastic punchlines, fantastic double entendres. I mean, this guy has it all. Aside of the typical coke lines and coke bars that we get from him, he can still make that creative till this day, which is an achievement that I don't think I've ever heard someone do except for Freddie Gibbs and some other rappers around that category. Number 12, we have Beach House by Once Twice Melody, and I gotta say, this record is one of the dreamiest albums I've heard in my life, period. Especially in this year alone. I mean, my God, I've never been more sucked into a record since I had, and I don't know, the last time I felt this sucked up in a record, because the very nice in the ears production is going on in here. I mean, it's obviously shoegaze. A lot of shoegaze music tends to be this way, but I think that Beach House, with a signature sound, and how this record is an hour and 20 minutes, and how it's explored thoroughly, it feels like in every track on this record, I feel like I'm more sucked into this universe or into this like creamy, washed up galaxy where I'm transported into a different universe, and I'm transported into a different world, mentally speaking. It's just, that's how music that you have to listen to when you're meditating, or when you want to be at ease, and when you just want to calm your nerves. This record has it all. At number 11, we have Cheat Codes by Black Thought and Danger Mouse. I'm so glad we had this collaboration happen, because Danger Mouse is such an underrated producer, and Black Thought is one of the best lyricists of all time, especially with the things that he's done in The Root. And I'm glad we have a more cohesive solo Black Thought project, because I think a lot of people have been wishing for a strong Black Thought project like this, especially a collaboration project. And seeing and hearing him collaborate with Danger Mouse just brings up the question, can he just make a whole collab album with Madlib or with The Alchemist, and let's see how that turns out. I mean, I want him to do it after listening to this project, because this guy, I'm convinced this guy can rap over anything and can come up with bars over bars over bars over bars. Number 10, I have The Forever Story. I mean, J.I.D. just manages to crush everything again. Maybe even better than DiCaprio 2, and that's a lot, because DiCaprio 2 has so many great highlights that I still listen to this day. that as an album, I think conceptually speaking, the Forever Story just has so much going on with it, with a lot of crazy stories in the mix, no pun intended. And yeah, a lot of his fantastic bars and one-liners, like Crack Sandwich, basically giving us an entire detailed story of a crazy encounter he had trying to defend his sisters from a crazy altercation. Radar basically blowing my minds out, being the second track with this bouncy ass beat, having a transition or switch up every, I don't know, every minute or so, with some fantastic wordplay, some fantastic lyrics, some fantastic bars. And if you're familiar with JID, you're getting more of the same, but just with so much more, because there's some R&B cuts in here like Cody Blue 31, which is very laid back and chill and very emotional as well. And there's some other very well written passages in here. It's kind of funny because I heard in the interview that JID does not plan on making an album like this again, because the working process behind this was crazy and was all over the place. And well, I do get that. I wish we get something even better, because there's still even room for improvement in this album alone. And even with this being his best record, he can exceed my expectations even more, or has the potential of making a potential masterpiece in the future. Number 9, we have Melt My Eyes, See Your Future by Denzel Curry. This is possibly his best project ever since Taboo, and Taboo was a phenomenal record that came out in 2018. But yeah, in this album, he combines the sounds of jazz with some modern hip-hop and into one, and it's honestly just a great listen overall. He seems in control of what he wants to make, and the mere fact that we got an expanded edition where more tracks, but basically in a live setting like NPR type, and a few loose singles in there, it just makes me appreciate this album and Denzel's artistry a lot more. I mean, it gives you this entire different mental picture of Denzel as an artist. And Denzel as an artist is a fantastic artist and a rapper. Walking is one of my favorite songs of this year, if not my favorite. It is a banger, banger, banger. The transition in the next 2 minutes is crazy. Overall, this album as a whole is honestly crazy. Like, as I said, the production credits behind it is crazy. You got Robert Glasper in the intro track, which is crazy enough. T-Pain in a song with him. I mean, this guy has everything in the song. This guy has everything in the album going on for him, and it is such a fantastic record. And I cannot wait to see what the heck is gonna cook up for the next album. And number 8, we have Diaspora Problems by So Glow. At first, I was a bit confused with this, especially since I'm not really that deep into the punk rock scene. I don't know who So Glow was until listening to this record. But after re-listening to it a few weeks later, it just clicked on me like this instantly, because I love the crazy stuff. I love the crazy shit that a lot of people come up with, and this thing just blew my mind out of the water. It was fantastic, it was phenomenal, and my god, Who Gon' Beat My Ass as an intro track is a phenomenal stellar intro. This sucks you into this whole social critique about politics, society in general. There's some personal struggles and stuff like that, all into the mix of one 40-minute extreme punk rock, in your face, fuck you type of energy. And man, it is one of the most explosive records I've had the pleasure of listening to. And number 7, we have 2000 by Joey Badass. I know this is an odd pick, having it this high, especially how it's been received overall. It's not a negative reception. I know it's been positive reception, but I think it's been underrated, very underrated. It's Joey Badass being himself, but I think it's his best project ever since 1999, because I'm getting some very fun mixtape vibes in the mix. And sure, well, a lot of this record is very clean, it's very sleek, and it doesn't have the rustiness that 1999 had. I feel that it's his best project because I had so much fun. It's not to discredit his previous projects. His previous projects have been very great and very consistent and very thoughtful and conceptual, but I think in here, I'm having so much senseless fun with his bars and bars in every song. I mean, Brand New 9/11 featuring West Side Gun is a banger, banger, banger. And while there are some conceptual moments like Survivor's Guilt, where it's a very deep and serious track narrating about his laws, his cousin's laws, and capital C's, which is honestly just something really hard to just listen to, especially with what happened and stuff like that. It's just one of those moments where you're like, Joey Badass is just one of the greatest rappers of all time, and this is like a showcase of why he is, because he can come up with albums like this, confirming why Joey Badass is important to the culture and for hip-hop in general. At number 6, we have In the Darkness, Hearts Aglow by Weyes Blood. I was a huge fan of Titanic Rising, and I listened to it a few months before this record came out, and I gotta say, this record just expands even more in Titanic Rising. It's more of your saying typical material. It's somber, it can be beautiful at times, it can be gorgeous, pretty, everything, all the adjectives described there. But what I love about this thing is that we hear more bigger and expansive outros, and we hear more expansive song structures, and it gives more details and texture. And that was something hard to really top, especially with Titanic Rising having these phenomenal strings playing around across the entire record, these great production choices. But in here, we're hearing a bit more levitating pad, a lot of instruments playing in here, and these, I guess, textures just unfolding, just becoming even better track by track. God Turned Me Into a Flower is easily one of the best songs in her catalog. For 5 or 6 minutes, this thing just keeps on unfolding every single minute into something more beautiful. It's an explosion. It's a beautiful explosion that everyone needs to hear, because, I mean, in the last 2 minutes, we get to hear some nature noises, and it's like if Mother Nature was, like, speaking to us. It's like if Weyes Blood was, like, Mother Nature, and she was, like, holding us and just, like, caressing us. That's what I feel from this album. I feel like I'm being caressed and touched. Pause. That sounds weird, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's very light in the ears, very careful. It's very just freaking beautiful. At number 5, you have the Todas Las Flores by Natalia Lafourcade, or Natalie Lafourcade. I don't know how to pronounce her name. But yeah, this record is possibly my favorite Spanish-speaking, as part of the Spanish-speaking community, record of this year. And it is one of the best that I've heard in my entire lifetime, if I can say that. But cause yeah, I mean, if you hear this album in general, I mean, yes, it's very lengthy. It's an hour and 6 minutes. But the reason why it's so lengthy, I guess, is because all of these tracks, or majority of these tracks, are very full length. They're like around an average 6 or 5 minutes. But it's definitely worth the while to stick and listen to all of these songs, because the mixing in here is one of the best mixing experiences I've heard in a while. It's like some Radiohead type mixing. The panning is crazy in here. It feels like it has some lo-fi mixing, some very like NPR type of live desk type of vibes that are built around this record with this mixing. And my God, is her voice so strong and sharp, and her emotion, how she can control her balance, her voice, her range, everything is just perfect with her as in general when she's making this record and when she's singing in this album. The lyrics detailing these stories about heartbreak, alienation, love, all of these topics just combined so masterfully crafted into this record. It's something that I haven't heard been so crafted like ever since Leon La Havas or Tyler, the Creator, with Igor. I mean, those records talking and being conceptual about heartbreak and emotional loss and everything like that. I mean, while those records were fantastic and all, I think that Todas Las Flores is very, I guess, diverse, and it has so many more messages and tales that are carrying around, and it's very well thought out, masterfully crafted, meticulously crafted. And my God, please give a freaking raise to anybody who's working the production team, because those instrumentals were fucking phenomenal, freaking phenomenal, groundbreaking, rich, everything you want to call it. The switch ups, going from jazz to folk to like contemporary Mexican music. Everything was amazing. It is an absolutely enchanting Mexican jazz folk album and music. Just give it a try, please. You will not regret it. At number 4, we have once again Billy Woods with Aethiopes. It's one of the most groundbreaking abstract hip-hop records I've heard in a while. The production here is creepy. It is rusty. It is dirty. It is filthy, but in a good way, if that makes any sense. And I love how this supports his narrative, creating these creepy tales, narrating these tales about generational trauma in his childhood, his family ancestry, and just connecting and interlinking so well and just so well crafted. And the mere fact that this thing is 40 minutes long is crazy. It feels longer, but not in a bad way. I think it feels longer in terms of I'm being just narrating the entire just generation, entire history book, but just so eloquently and just so well thought out and masterfully crafted. Number 3, we have Hellfire by Black Midi. I wasn't a huge fan of Cavalcade with the time it came out last year, so that's how you pronounce the name of the record. But I'm willing to re-listen to it now, especially when Hellfire dropped, because listening to the singles in preparation for this album, like Sun Tzu, Welcome to Hell, Welcome to Hellfire, and tracks like those, it just gave me so much hope for this record, because they're mind-blowing, and this record just delivers on its promise. Almost every single track in here is freaking mind-blowing. Again, with the length, it's 40 minutes long, if not 37, something like that. And for a short time span, it gives you like an overload of information, an overload of music, production, everything just in your freaking face. It's a prog rock album It is one of the most impressive prog rock albums I've heard in my life. And number 2, we have Tana Talk 4 by Benny the Butcher. We got the entire Griselda list in here, the big 3 there here. But yeah, I mean, Benny the Butcher is possibly my favorite member from Griselda and from Griselda in general. And he never fails. He never fails. He just never fails to just meet my expectations. Tana Talk 4 might be his best project to date from what I've heard personally. Because, man, track by track, he's going bar by bar. The length, I think, is only like 12 tracks long. It is a perfect length. The Benny knew what he was doing with this album. He got J. Cole on the freaking intro. That thing alone is enough to convince you to go and listen to this record. Like, J. Cole snapped in that song. Benny snapped. It was like baton passing type thing. It's just phenomenal to witness and to listen. And it's just mind-blowing to hear those two collaborate. And aside of that, you got some notable features in here. You got the underground scene overall in this album. And even him, whenever he's rapping alone, it's like, it's him being himself. He's in his comfort zone. He got Uncle Al producing the majority of this album with some other producers as well. But it's like he knows what he wants to do. He's confident with what he's saying. He doesn't doubt himself when he's saying these words, these wordplay. Everything about this album is freaking phenomenal, fantastic. My favorite gangsta hip-hop record in a long, long time, especially, I would say, ever since Alfredo or Pinata or something like that, because this thing, as I said, it's just mind-blowing words of wordplay, gangsta rap, coke rap type bars left and right here. He's doing it effortlessly. He's basically doing it effortlessly. And this is the reason why Benny the Butcher needs to stop being under freaking ground and gotta get a Grammy nominated. He has to get Grammy nominated. At least once, bro. At least once. This guy's way too good for him to be just labeled as an underground rapper. And my personal album of the year has to go easily to Mr.Morale and The Big Steppers. My God, does Kendrick never freaking miss. I mean, Mr.Morale and The Big Steppers is my most played album of this year. Obviously, it's album of the year. But, bro, it broke boundaries. It broke records that I never think I would break. It broke the Donda records, literally. Because I played the living crap out of Donda last year. But this thing even broke that. I mean, what doesn't this record have? It's like the perfect continuation from Damn. It even surpasses Damn. It surpasses Damn and potentially Good Kid, Mad City. I know it's a wild take that it surpasses Good Kid, Mad City. But it just does, in my opinion. Because the reason as to why is because the concept of generational trauma, family ties, therapy, it all is executed so freaking perfectly into this 1 hour and 18-minute ride and journey and mental journey for Kendrick. And it's something just rewarding throughout the experience. I love how it's separated in 2 discs. I love how it's separated in disc 1, disc 2 as The Big Steppers and Mr.Morale. And I'm sorry that this dog barking. It's possibly one of your neighbors. But yeah, I mean, as I was saying, I love how it's separated because these are like 2 completely different arcs and 2 completely different mental pathways for Kendrick Lamar as he's venting, as he's releasing all these emotions as an outburst in these 2 legs. And it just proves that Kendrick has still so much to say. And another reason why I love this record so much, I think it's a freaking masterpiece, is because it's like I was always wondering, what is Kendrick's mental state post-success? Because, I mean, after T-Pab, and after Damn, reaching commercial heights, Pulitzer Prize, what's going on behind the scenes? And this thing is a perfect narration of what was going on behind the scenes, his mental psyche, how he was dealing with problems of not being able to please everybody. And I think that line of from Crown, where he's saying he can't please everybody, it's like it's a perfect summary of what's going on with Kendrick right now, Mr.Morale. I mean, some people like Mr.Morale, they're saying, oh, it's the weakest in his discography or something, it's not that great. It's like what Kendrick's saying, he can't please everybody. Personally, I find this record to be beautiful and a masterpiece, and while it is getting great reception, I think the complaint of, oh, it's not as consistent, or it doesn't have the punch that Damn had, or T-Pab or whatnot, I think we need to exclude comparing albums with this album in general, because you have to listen to it for what it is. If you listen to it for what it is, I feel like you'll get much more enjoyment and much more appreciation with what Kendrick is trying to do here. Because this is a huge step, no pun intended, in Kendrick's life and Kendrick's discography and his artistry. And I think it is the right and appropriate step for his life in general. It's something life changing. I would think, especially releasing this overwhelming amount of emotions and just therapy that's just accumulated in this album alone. Your favorite albums of this year? What was your personal album of the year? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. Comment what was your favorite album of the year. Subscribe for more content, notification bell so you don't miss an upload from me. And yeah, see you guys next time. Peace out, and I cannot wait for what 2023 has to hold for new music.